The mobile studio where Deep Purple recorded Smoke on the Water was actually owned by the Rolling Stones. True story. My first myth today asked if it's true that the song Lola was written after Ray or Dave Davies from the Kinks actually had that sort of encounter with a transvestite. Ah yes, the beginning of the love affair between transvestites and rock and roll musicians. It's a tale as old as time, isn't it? And this is really the song where all of that began. The song obviously is beyond iconic, and there are countless different stories as to how this song came to be, and it really depends on who you ask, and more to the point, who you believe. Ray Davies wrote the song, so as far as I'm concerned, he's kind of the biggest authority on it because it's his words. And he claimed that this story was actually written from an experience that their manager went through around the time he wrote the song. The guy went out with a transvestite and he didn't know it until after the fact. However, Kinks drummer Mick Avery said that he was the inspiration for the song, and at the time when he was living in London, he used to frequent transvestite bars pretty regularly. Now the link to the story of it involving the Davies brothers actually comes back to Dave Davies, who went out on a date with Candy Darling, who was one of Andy Warhol's superstars at the time. Dave says that it's not true that he wasn't aware. He knew that Candy Darling was actually a guy in drag, and the two of them just went out for drinks because they were friends. There are tons of other stories, but as far as I'm concerned, anyone outside of the band really probably wasn't the person who this was written about. And while the story about it being one of the Davies brothers who went out with a transvestite certainly seems like a myth, it is totally true that it happened to someone related to the band. Our second myth is a pretty persistent one, and it asks whether it's true that Robert Smith, lead singer of The Cure, actually said that anyone who likes their song Friday I'm in Love isn't really a Cure fan. You can easily make the case that this is the biggest Cure song, and it's definitely the one that vaulted them to international superstardom. And the reality is, whenever a band gets a huge worldwide single, anyone who was kind of around before that starts to hate on that song and hate anybody who was there because of that song. Or in other words, anyone who wasn't into the band before that song, they're posers. This story of Robert saying that has been all over the internet for years, but is it true? Yeah, actually, it's completely true. Speaking to Music Express back in 2000, Robert said that people who came to their shows to see the song Friday I'm in Love aren't real Cure fans, and they're not the people who are buying Cure records. Anyone who's been in music totally understands where he's coming from on this, because it really is a bandwagon sort of song. Not to say it's a bad track, but it got a little bigger than that band probably wanted it to. But the fact that he said it about a decade after that song came out, it really has minimal impact and really doesn't mean much as far as I'm concerned. It's a bit of sour grapes. But if you're asking whether or not Robert Smith himself called out a bunch of fans for kind of being bandwagoners, yeah, he totally did. My last myth was a big one, and it asks whether it's true that Deep Purple drummer Ian Paice actually played drums on the Velvet Underground's Squeeze album. Before we get to whether or not that's true, a little bit of history on the Squeeze album and why a lot of people don't really see it as a Velvet Underground record. For purists like myself, Squeeze is not a real Velvet Underground album. There's no Lou Reed, there's no John Cale, there's no Maureen Tucker, there's no Sterling Morrison. Basically, all you have left is one member of the Velvet Underground. Doug Yule handles all of the instruments throughout the record, he wrote all of the songs, and it does carry the Velvet Underground name, but in reality, it's a Doug Yule solo record. The other part of it, though, is when you listen to the songs, there's no way around it. These are pretty miserable tracks, and the Velvet Underground pretty much wrote great songs when they were together. And the drummer on this album was in fact his good friend, Deep Purple drummer Ian Paice. It's also a little bit weird from the Deep Purple side, because when this album was being recorded, Deep Purple in theory were out supporting their amazing Machine Head record, so chances are this was done in like 1 or 2 days. The drums weren't the best he's ever done. So yeah, it's true that Ian does play the drums on this, which is theoretically a Velvet Underground record, but when it really comes down to it, it's a Doug Yule solo album and Ian's on it. So those are my myths for this week. If you want me to dig into the truth on any story you and your friends are arguing about, go ahead and email it to me at thedailyguru@gmail.com. As always, you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook right here, and I'll see you guys again next time.